kick things off. Okay, so what we've got today, good morning, everybody. Welcome to session 6. You made it. You've survived up to this point, so congratulations. If you're still hanging in with us, we're really proud of you. And we have an awesome session with Ryan today. He's going to talk about packaging. What we wanted to start off with was a question that would kind of lead into some of the beginning announcements that I have regarding sort of where we're at and where we are going in the future. So I'm going to throw this in the chat, but I'm also going to just say it out loud for folks. So what we would love to know are what kinds of people or places you want to hear and learn from or explore in person through the regional tours that we will be having as part of this training. And the idea is that we're kind of taking all of this theory and making it tangible and visible by going out into the region, looking at some of these things, whether it's a facility or a farm. I think we're really open at this point to what that looks like. But if there's been a particular part of this training that you wanted to like really dive deep on and learn more about, or a particular type of person that works within this industry, whether that's like a wholesale buyer or like just maybe a farmer that has 30 years of experience selling wholesale, we would really love to know that. So if you want to throw whatever thoughts you've got on that into the chat, or if there's a particular thing within your region that you're like, wow, this is super cool, and I think other people that are learning about wholesale would like to see or learn about, like one of those hidden gems, right? Stuff that like maybe we don't know about as, you know, advisors, trainers, people who have maybe worked in extension. Maybe we don't know about it, but you want to share that with other people. Also put that in the chat, because that's part of what we want to do is highlight some of those things for you. I don't know, Jane, if you want to add anything else to that prompt, or if you feel like that's adequate for what we had talked about.
Yeah, I think that's fine. You know, we're just trying to, collect some information to see where we go from here.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as folks are starting to throw some of that into the chat, I've got a couple of people here who I'm going to make co-host, and then we'll kind of get on with some of the announcements. Okay, so just a friendly reminder, we have 2 bonus sessions that we are offering based on your requests. The first one will be on the 18th of April, and that is going to be covering nutrient management with Natalie. And then we've got another one scheduled for the 2nd of May, and that will be with Ryan, talking about financial management. So we are going to get the calendar invites out for those very soon, probably within the next couple of days, just in case you are gung-ho about your digital calendar. We'll make sure that those are there. But it's going to be 90 minutes, I believe, is the plan. So not quite 2 hours. But that is something that we wanted to make available to you. We're also going to be creating a registration link for that, so that we can open it up to the public. So if you know other farmers that would be really interested in learning about those things and you want to share it with them, by all means, please do so. We'll get that information out to you probably by the end of this week, so that you can help us promote it, and we can have some good attendance at that. The other thing that I just wanted to share was just kind of where we are at in the training, sort of as it relates to the grand scheme of this whole sort of program. So what I kind of did, because I'm a very visual person, I like things, timelines, Gantt charts. This is super rough. We'll fill it in as we go, but I just wanted to have this as a reference. And this is something I just added to our shared folder if you'd like to look at this later. But basically what I've got here is this is what we've just done, are all of these sessions. It will clearly be extended into beginning of May. But then we've also got these in-person tours, which I had just mentioned. So this is the thought process that we had a sort of planning team of both farmers and people who work with a lot of farmers was timing, that it might make the most sense to host 2 of those tours in June and then 2 of those tours in October, and thinking about sort of geographic distribution, having maybe a couple up north, couple down south, depending on, you know, what kinds of suggestions we get for locations. But that's sort of what we had in mind. So I just wanted you guys to be thinking about that, and just as a reminder, right? Like, this is part of what we have planned. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that like the planning team or facilitators, if you want to add to that from our discussion last time, just sort of what our thoughts were on that front. And if not, that's okay too. Okay, so just wanted to make sure that that was a reminder. And I do see some things are coming in the chat too. Thank you for your thoughts, folks, on where people could be attending. Cool. Okay. So just, yeah, keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to be working as a team to plan some of those things. And based on what you throw in the chat, suggestions that we get, we'll be able to give you more information about specific time and location. We are taking into account travel time, right? Making sure that people aren't having to drive like 6 hours one way to get to one of these things. And then I think the only other thing that I wanted to mention, and I'll probably mention this again at the end of class, is just that we are going to send out a link for you to be able to set up an advising session with our trainers, because that is also part of this. So now that you've kind of dug into some of the assignments and worksheets, we want to give you the chance to get some of that one-on-one feedback, or even maybe in a group session. We've talked about that just based on availability. So we'll make sure that we send that out to you. Basically, what you'll indicate is your own availability, and then I'll be matching that up with the availability of our advisors, and then we will find time for you guys to meet. Our goal is to have you fill that out probably within the next 2 weeks, and then we will schedule those for either later in April or early May. That's sort of the idea on that. So with that, that is all I have for announcements. So I think I'm going to hand it over to you, Jane.
Okay, thanks, Emily. And thanks, folks, for putting your ideas in the chat. I was reading those, and there are lots of really great ideas for where we could go on tours. So thank you very much to those who engaged with the homework and were able to put some things down on paper and get those submitted. And for breakouts today, I'm going to call on 4 of you who filled out the worksheets and really seemed to grasp what you needed to do in those, so that you can show the other farmers in the breakout what you did and kind of help kickstart their thinking. So I'm gonna call you by name so you can pull up your worksheet and be ready to do that. It's putting you on the spot, but all you have to do is a little show and tell in the breakouts. So that would be Renee Fusello, Mary Lou Larson, Gina Lydek, if she's on, and Bev Antonich. So you 4, if you could pull up your worksheets and be prepared to show those when you get to the breakouts, which I think, Emily, probably means you're going to have to make them co-hosts as well, right? Okay, so we're going to go back to that worksheet, and I'm going to put the link to the homework version of it in the chat right now, so you can find it easily in case you don't have it handy. So the worksheet it's kind of bare bones. I mean, you could maybe look at it and think this doesn't look like anything. But I do think it's going to be a really useful tool if you fill it out to start thinking about, you know, what your enterprise really looks like. So when you first encountered this 2 weeks ago, it didn't have instructions with it. I added those in response to questions from people. So Now there are instructions at the top, which you can read if you need to check back in on that later, but I'm just going to go through this for a minute and show you an example that I put together based on something that I included in the presentation 2 weeks ago. So that shredded coleslaw mix. So the example here, remember I talked about traceability and being able to track one step back to your suppliers and one step forward to your buyers. And that helps you place your enterprise in the right licensing pathway too. So in this case, the coleslaw mix is coming from my own farm and the cabbages, and then I'm procuring carrots and radishes from a couple of neighbors. And you can, for your own use, you can name who those people are. If you know who your farmer suppliers are, you can certainly name those for your own use. And then not adding any other off-farm ingredients. Okay, so middle column, what do you do or cause to have done to your products? So for making that coleslaw, I am going to use a local community center kitchen and shred it with a KitchenAid mixer. And then shipping, I'm not going to use any cold storage. I'm just going to pack it in coolers with ice and transport it right away. And if I'm selling to the food hub, they have cold storage, so I can deliver it to them right away and they'll take care of it from there. Okay, so that covers the one step back and what I do. And then the one step forward is retail sales. I'm not doing any of that in this case. That coleslaw mix is getting made and then immediately delivered to wholesale buyers. So when there's a single step between me and the end consumer, I'm selling it to a high school food service and a nursing home. And then I'm also selling some to a farmer's market-based hub, which then is an intermediary between me and another wholesale buyer. And then there's yet another step to the end consumer. So that's where you're seeing multiple steps. So that is the example of the worksheet and how that just kind of lays out, your process, your suppliers, your buyers, and enables you to feed that into the flow chart to figure out your licensing. And this is also a really good tool to have when you need to talk to an inspector, because it's kind of like an outline of your enterprise that the inspector can look at and get what it is you're doing. Okay, before we pop into breakouts, I'm just going to really quickly remind folks of a few points from last week. One is those cross-border sales. Remember that other states have different laws. And Renee, being in Michigan, you have to remember that also, that what is product to the farm in Minnesota and doesn't require a license, in Michigan, things might be different. In Wisconsin, product to the farm processing requires a license. Wisconsin doesn't have the same provision as Minnesota. And in North Dakota, they would consider that product to the farm processing to be cottage food and would not allow it to be shipped out of state unless you get licensed to do it. So states are really different. Just remember to be aware of that. Remember that there are kitchens in many communities that could potentially be used for a commercial enterprise. It could be a restaurant kitchen, BFW, church, township hall, community center, depending on how complex your activity is and how well equipped the kitchen is. You need those things to match up, but there are many more options than people tend to realize. And then the third thing I want to remind folks of are the special processes, things that are higher risk. So juice processing, for instance. Juice is considered a very high risk product. If you're doing that for wholesale, you need a hazard analysis and critical control points plan. If you are doing canning of acidic or acidified food in a licensed situation, you will need training for that and probably some specialized canning equipment. If you are wanting to process a low acid food, there's a really high bar for canning that, because low acid canning is a very high risk for botulism. So those special processes that introduce hazards do require some extra training, extra certification, specialized equipment. Okay, I think we shall go into breakout rooms now and let the 4 people that I mentioned do a little show and tell. And the rest of you, if you're able to follow that link, open your homework, make a copy of it for yourself if you haven't done that already, and maybe just start right now with popping in some things about your enterprises. Okay, Emily, send us away.
I think that's everyone, Jane. I think everyone's back.
Okay, great. Maybe just a real quick round of report outs, because we do want to get to Ryan's session. But yeah, Ryan, how did things go in your group?
Oh, it was all Renee. I don't know. I just is it? I guess Renee showed what she's doing with this cottage food product that she's developing. It's the greens seasoning, right, Renee? So even those that don't like kale like the green seasoning. So it's a winter product, and she's talking about how to package it. But she's in Michigan, so she had to tell us. She's like did a whole class on cottage foods in Michigan. So I got trust she's got that right about I don't know anything you want to say, Renee. I don't need to report on what you told us, but yeah, you just walked through.
I was nervous talking, but everybody in our breakout room was great to I guess let me talk about the homework. I was really appreciative of being able just to because I'm just trying to see the different avenues I could do with that. And so I thank everybody for listening to me chatter on and on about it. Thank you, guys.
It's all good.
Thank you. Gina, about you? We'll just go for the group leaders.
I talked mostly about the license I'm trying to get for hot sauce. I got some real good ideas on that, and one thing I was doing was kind of waiting to check with inspectors and stuff until I had a little better concept of it. But I was counseled that maybe I'm worrying about way too much, and if I talk to somebody now, I might end some of those issues that are going on in my head.
Yep, great. Bev?
I had kind of mapped out 3 different types of products that we've been bringing to market, both at the farmers market, through the food hubs, and also some discussion about the work that we're doing with Loaves and Fishes to donate potatoes. But at the end of the day, everything we're doing, I think, doesn't require a license.
Okay. Cool.
I will just add that we had a brief discussion afterwards. I asked, is anybody else needing a license? And one of the participants said, yep, I do have a wholesale handler's license and the mobile food handler's license. And we just kind of confirmed that neither of those should be something that should cause great distress. If that's where your products lead you and that's what works for your farm, go ahead and do that. It's not expensive or difficult at the end of the day.
Great, thanks. Mary Lou, how about you?
Well, I fall into not need a license with vegetables that'll just be minimally processed and taken maybe to farmer's market. The mobile market is really feeling like a good fit for me at this point. Have some more conversations planned about that. And then farther away, the Virginia's Farmers Market Hub, that's the closest hub that is available at this time for me. And so I looked through some information on the extension site about processing. Just wanted to make sure that I had in mind what I would need to do, with and with I'm looking at garlic and pole beans and cherry tomatoes, none of which really require water to process. And then I also looked at refrigeration requirements just to see, especially with that 60-mile journey, that I wanted to be thinking about what I would need to transport and have things be in as good a shape as they could be. That was some, I just keep finding really good information on that extension site and recognize names of authors who are our teachers, which is really awesome. So,
Great.
yeah, I think that's what I did.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so, yep, so for those of you who felt like this assignment just didn't gel up until now, hopefully this review and breakout exercise will help get you figuring it out, because I do think having that worksheet laid out is going to be a really useful tool. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Emily or Ryan, whoever's going to pick up next. Thanks, everyone.
Take it away, Ryan.
Okay, there we go. Well, it's good to be back with y'all. I've had 2 cups of coffee, so I'm feeling pretty good. Also, just in preparation for today, I was initially like, I don't know, packaging and packing, but actually just getting prepared for it really kind of got me excited for the season, honestly. These people that did these case studies out of Vermont that we're going to look at around packing houses, these guys deserve a prize or something. I mean, this is just freaking awesome. And I was just sort of I got a little inspired for the season, right? I'm 20 years in, so you need a little inspiration. Emily once worked with me. She knows I always need to get inspired, because it's just sort of like, otherwise I'll trot around. But you do need to get inspired for the season. You need that kind of juice to pull you through the summer. It's enough work. So we're going to dig into packing and packaging. First, we're going to dig into sort of, what does packaging look like? I got a little exercise on that, where we're going to try to find the right box, right? And after that, then we're gonna go on the second section is really about packing house design and some of the elements to, packing and grading produce well. But like anything, this is a practice, right? So I always feel like maybe I've just done too much yoga over the years or something. Everything's a practice. So we can sit, we'll get some ideas here today, but what really matters is that we get in the field, and over time we get more and more practice dealing with produce. I don't know, I'm this intuitive grower kind of guy, so I think we intuitively sort of get a feel for, yep, that's a quality carrot, yep, that's a good tomato, yep, this tomato sucks, I'm gonna throw it over here in the compost. In a food safe environment, Annalisa, away from the, okay. But so, so again, this is a way of trying to frame up some of the standards around packaging, some ideas around packing house design, some ways that we can produce quality food. Great. But really it's practice over time, implementing. We just get better at this with time. I like to think after 20 years, I'm a little better than I was 20 years ago. Although some days I really wonder. Anyways, I'm going to get into this. Let's share. This guy right here. Oh, there's too many windows, Ryan. Too many. I don't know why I can never figure that out. Okay, here we go. Boom. Okay. There we go. Packaging. That's me. I'm going to give me a second here, folks. I'm gonna get all these little faces of ours over to the one side. Okay. All right. So first, we'll get into packaging. There's a couple things to think about here. I'm going to make a little distinction between what we call item packaging, which really I think falls a lot into kind of the merchandising category. I mean, both of them are part of merchandising, really, and then case packaging. I'm not gonna dig into this too much, but I do think it's important to note that depending on your product, right, item packaging can be pretty important. So over on the right-hand side, and if anybody knows these guys are Strictly Mushrooms people, we used to source them at the co-op here in Detroit Lakes. But again, if you think about a mushroom product or mushrooms, right, they're almost always in these little clamshells. We got a clearly defined label. We are clearly defining all the different types of mushrooms. That's really kind of a mushroom issue, right? People care a lot about whether it's mushroom A versus mushroom B versus mushroom C. We really want to make it kind of clean and clear what that product exactly is in comparison to, like, oh, it's a green pepper. Is that a sprinter, an ace? The variety doesn't matter as much when you're selling a pepper. It's like, oh, that's a green pepper. People know that. You could just, in the produce department, they could put green pepper, $2.49 a pound. That's all that matters. But for the item packaging, something like mushrooms is extremely important. And my advice is to think about what is the standard that you see for your product, for that particular product. Renee was talking about her greens mix. And she said, hey, I'm just selling these things in little baggies, and, hey, I'm going to, to really do this well, I got the honest to goodness, 4-ounce bottles or something. And so we got glass bottle, we got a label. Hey, we're selling a professional product here. And so that's sort of the standard for her product. And you need to ask yourself for the standard for your own product. This is for an item packaging. This is your opportunity to also showcase or kind of get a little bit of your brand across. If you see on the Strictly Mushrooms here, they have this little Strictly Mushrooms sticker on the front. It's okay. I think it could be a little more clear. Myself, we just use our own logo on packaging here. You see my eyes popping out over these peppers. But so for me, one of the only products that I do this with is salad mix, right? It needs to be in some kind of item package. I don't sell salad mix bulk. You can see the two varieties. I had a hard time finding pictures here. I used to do this clamshell over in the middle picture. You can kind of see the one side of it, and I put our logo on it, just to sort of say, hey, this is from Lyda Farm. I've since moved to just a plastic bag. It's inexpensive. It's also a biodegradable bag, so that theoretically this will break down in time. They certainly break down from season 1 to season 2, when I go to reuse them the next year, my hand just goes through them. So they must be breaking down to some degree. But again, for us, we like to keep it simple. We have a more inexpensive packaging item. These plastic bags are pennies or portions of pennies, as opposed to the clamshell, which is, I think, is probably something like 40 odd cents a clamshell, right? In the whole scheme of things, doesn't seem like a lot, but all these things add up. So again, item packaging, think about those exact things that make sense for the particular package you're talking about. Another kind of merchandising item is that, I'd like to always take inspiration from farmers markets. I like to think that often what we're doing is trying to bait people in with the beauty of the product, right? Like this is pretty, right? you want to buy from these folks. There's this mix of colors. There's also this mix of different heights as well as textures. We have the baskets plus the wooden baskets up here. We got the jars in the back. I mean, it's really visually appealing. But if you do notice here that a lot of these products, they're what we would call what they call in the grocery business naked, right? They're naked products. There is no packaging. And so I'm looking here. Do we even have one? I don't even have a single example there, with the exception of those jams or jellies, whatever, are in the jar, which is obviously their standard. It's hard to sell jelly in bulk, right? Like, I don't know, like people scoop out jelly or something by spoon or something. And really, our grocers, in many respects, are trying to do the exact same thing that we might be familiar doing at a farm stand or a farmer's market stand, right? If you take a look here, most of this product is naked, right? There isn't a packaging to it. Yep, I see in the bottom right some lettuce in a pack, maybe romaine hearts, pretty standard, 3 romaine hearts in a pack. I see some standard iceberg, of course, wrapped in plastic. That's iceberg 101, right? Maybe there's some mushrooms in the far left. But again, what they're doing in their merchandising in order to bait in the customers is not as much about item packaging as it is about the prettiness of the naked produce, bringing folks in. And so really our question isn't the item packaging as much as how do we get it on, what does it look like in terms of packaging on the back end, which we'll look at. But depending on who you're selling to wholesale, some don't care about the merchandising, right? If we're selling to our friends here at school food service or in a restaurant, you know what? Yep, we need a carrot that we can handle and chop up efficiently. So we don't want carrots with 3 arms. But you know what? We're not selling the prettiness of the raw product to our customers. We're going to be processing those carrots or those whatever food you're going to sell us, and it's their end result that's going to sell the customer. So unlike the grocer, who very much needs this prettiness of the whole product, much as we do at the farmer's market, these guys don't care. And so this is something to keep in mind, but either whether they care about that prettiness and how they're merchandising it or not, all of them care about quality. All of them care about how your product fits into the organization of their business. That is, can they find the green peppers in the cooler, right? And they do care about case standards. And there's a couple of reasons why we care about case standards. I've been in a number of grocery store offices, and it's usually just a large stack of papers and catalogs and bills. And I did my darndest to find a picture more recent of like a messy desk of a grocer. And the best I found was this one from the 1930s. You could see all the bills hanging from the board, but seems like everybody pretties up their desk before they have a picture taken by the press. So let's go to quality, right? And this really comes down to packaging. You know, there's a reference in your folder here for today that came from the Good Acre. There's also one from the Minneapolis Public Schools. This over on the right is the one from Good Acre. I think we all like it just because it's so graphical, you know, and it just, I just kind of like how simply it's laid out, you know, especially this one with the zucchini, where it's like, no, don't bring a zucchini that you have to hold up with two hands. Like that. That's my favorite picture that they have in there. You know, but all of us have tried to pawn off some of these things. You know, I've got some, was it mosaic virus or whatever at the bottom, and these zucchinis are not looking great. And in a farmer's market situation, it's like, I don't know, would you buy these things? And, you know, oftentimes the answer is no, because they look like they're diseased, which they are. Or they're trying to pawn off the third picture, which are these weirdos. I've often found in a farmer's market situation, people like the ones, are attracted to the ones with the little blossom on the end. But yeah, I mean, trying to look at what is the standard that people are used to. And so if I'm a grocery buyer, you know, I'm used to these consistent, similar size zucchini, right? All packed nicely in a box. And so, and on a wholesale, in a wholesale environment, you know, these standards matter, and this quality matters, because especially for me on a grocery situation, that zucchini might be the only zucchini I'm buying for the week, right? So if it looks somewhat bad, like some on the left, it's really going to look bad after a week. So unless it comes in looking really good, by the end of, even if it comes in looking really good by the end of a week, it can kind of start looking bad. So it's gotta, at the front end, look good and be of good quality and handled well, so that it can hold well in that pretty display, right? Because if it's not looking, there's, you know, we've all heard the saying a million times, like, people eat with their eyes, right? And it's very, very true. I mean, if it's not holding well and looking well, it just doesn't sell. The slightest wrinkle on a pepper. I mean, us as growers sometimes get frustrated with grocers and some people in food service. You're like, you want perfect produce all the time. Yeah, I know it's a frustration, but part of the reason is they get sick and tired of throwing this stuff out, because if the end customer isn't seeing this pretty product, or if it doesn't look fairly perfect when it first comes in, it's not going to look good after 5 days. And even these blemishes and some of these issues, despite, you know, discounting, despite trying to make a to-do about, hey, it's okay to buy imperfect produce, a lot of people in the grocery environment are throwing out a lot of produce. There's no doubt. So we have this as a reference. I think it's worth checking out, thinking about your target crops, so that you're aiming for the right look, if you will. If you really want to get nerdy, you just Google this AMS grades and standards. It's more information than you really want, with all these like detailed old pictures about what actually makes for a grade A #1 asparagus. But I don't think that's necessary. I think you if you go with someone like that, hey, that's a consistent, good looking zucchini, you're good. The other thing that's part of that, this Good Acre reference guide, are these pages that you could print out that gives you a sense about size as well, right? At what point is the size too small or too big? It's really kind of a cool guide in that way. And I do think one way of using it is, you know, maybe you as the farm operator, and you've been at it for a while, you're feeling good. You feel good about the size and what we're shooting for in terms of look. But it could be something you could set up in a packing shed if you have folks that are hired or somebody that's working for you, so that they know what they're shooting for, right? So it isn't so much like, oh yeah, that's a zucchini, but is it a zucchini of not necessarily perfect, but within range of the right size and looking of good quality. And so it gets at this question about what is the size, what's kind of the cleanliness standard that we're looking for. It also gives some details about storage temp. Do we want to keep this in a moist environment or not? And here's an example of the potatoes. Print this thing out in 8.5 by 11. You can hold it up there. Yeah, it's the right size. And what kind of pack are we going for? Hey, we put it in a 1 1/9 bushel box in order to get a 50-pound pack, as a 50-pound pack is a standard for potatoes. So there's certainly the product standards, right? And kind of every single crop has its own standard. So over here on the upper left, this is a not uncommon situation for a leaf lettuce or a salad mix in a farmer's market situation. It's the whole zip-locking of America, if you will. I find this common, but I also find it a little bit perplexing. Like, why the zip-locks? Just on cost alone, the zip-locks aren't doing it for you. There's the merchandising element. I think it does look very homemade, and maybe that's what you're going for. It works fine as holding, but I just think in terms of cost and kind of having a professional look, just moving to a bag on a roll, a standard kind of produce packing bag, is an improvement, like the one I was showing you earlier, because you're just burning a lot of money on Ziplocs. But again, this might work in a farmer's market situation. Here in the center, we have another kind of farmer's market situation, a kind of a bigger bag that things are packed in. I think this works great. This works fine. It's just that it might not be the standard that those in wholesale are looking for or are used to, right? So if we're thinking the world of salad mix, over on the upper right, this really is the standard, the 5-ounce bag of salad mix, love it or hate it. You don't have to stick it in a cellophane bag that looks like an earthbound bag. I'm not saying that, but that is the standard of purchase for folks. There are, there are clamshells, 1-pound clamshells. There are 5-ounce retail bags. And then, sometimes there are food service standards as well on a per product basis. So depending on your target crop, you want to investigate this a little bit, either with the buyer or with a secondary source, like it's someone that we're dealing with here, to ID, like, am I meeting the standard that's our wholesale buyers are expecting, are used to? And so how do we get to those standards in terms of quality, and some of those standards in terms of product packaging? Well, certainly in quality, a lot of it just comes down to our packing shed processes, right? I've always estimated, I don't know if this is true or not, I just spitball, that about 30% of my time is spent in a packing shed, right? So you're like, oh, I farm vegetables, and what does that look like? If I ever get a tour, I'm like, well, I spend about 30% of my time in this shed right here, which sometimes it doesn't look like farming or feel like farming, but for specialty crops, it very much is. I think it's where you separate, a professional grower from kind of a casual grower. I mean, a lot of the magic happens around the quality of the product that you're putting out in a packing shed. And so, yes, this is an issue of grading and sorting. We're getting rid of those carrots with 3 arms. we're getting rid of those peppers that have little sun scald. We're sorting them out. We're like, no, you're not meeting the stuff. It's where quality control happens. It's also where grading can happen, right? I think I made the point earlier in this course. If not, I usually make it. If you just think about how you can grade just potatoes, right? Oftentimes people are just selling potatoes in bulk, and you got you got A, B, and C all mixed together kind of situation, and just grading these out and giving you different price points and making different products out of them is a great way to actually just be more profitable and have a better set expectation with your customers. A lot of this is done by washing and hydrocooling, depending on the crop. If we think about, say, all of our brassicas, we think about, that big head of cabbage, that 5-pound head of cabbage or something. We really want to get that core temperature down on that crop. And we do that. I do that. Often by hydrocooling it, right? Take those cabbage and sit it in a big tub of water for a good period of time, like, half hour, and get that temperature down before we get it into a cooler, which helps to also get that temperature down. And once we get that temperature down, as close as below 40 degrees, it'll hold better. Because, oftentimes people think, fresher the better, right? Like you just took those beets and you just sprayed those things. Hey, super fresh, here you go. I sell them to you. Those actually aren't going to hold as well as those that have been hydrocooled. The core temperature got down in the beets, and then they were held overnight in a cooler. Those beets, properly cooled, are actually going to hold better in somebody's fridge after they buy them from me at a farmer's market. They get them in a CSA box, or they go to a wholesale buyer. We want quality, we want product that's clean, and we want product that holds, right? And so if we can do these things for our customers, we're giving them a quality product. Certainly some things are not hydrocooled at all. They just need to be cooled. And I don't know, that graphic's the best I found in terms of, this is hydrocooling sweet corn. I don't hydrocool sweet corn. But it goes to show how much time it takes to bring down that core temperature, which apparently an hour, 40-some minutes. I'm surprised. What do these processes look like in real life? It's me standing by a sink. I got to get some more pictures that are more recent, apparently. This is now my 16-year-old, who I think in this picture is probably 7 or 8 or something like that. But this is me and Willem washing French breakfast radishes. You see here in this picture a big tub in the upper right. These are what I call my greens tubs for smaller crops. Think about doing salad mix, think about doing arugula, think about doing radishes, right? These are just 2 dairy tubs, 2 dairy sinks. And actually I have another dairy sink that I got here, where I'm soaking, hydrocooling the product, washing off with, just spraying, and then getting here into the cases to get in the cooler to hold. On the left here, these are Salad Nova lettuces that were hydrocooling and soaking in water. Again, this is in like a tub. For me, it's I'm just using a standard livestock stock tank. That's my preferred tank of choice. Allison, you got a question? Help me from yammering.
Thanks, Ryan. Do you then do a Sanidate dunk too?
A what?
Sanidate.
Oh, Sanidate. No, I don't use the sanitizer, frankly.
Okay.
Nope.
I was just curious.
I'm straight up water. We're 100% on well water. We're testing the well water for nitrates and stuff. But no, I don't. Do you use Sanidate or use sanitizer?
Yes. I typically pack with Eric, and we do we can be kind of selective as to which crops we're dunking, but yeah, we will dunk the greens. It's, so maybe this is something for Annalisa, but I have this like foods commonly eaten raw versus foods commonly not eaten raw, and I get these like very distinct categories in my head, and I need to keep them separate. And so I maybe need some help with that to help
That's
me.
okay. But
Get it
what do you have like
not-
a double sink or a 3 compartment sink kind of thing where we're
Three.
soaking and then we
Yep.
put it in?
Yep,
Yeah.
a three tank sink.
Yeah. So I'd say you're just doing one better than me, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but if it's not necessary, it's not necessary. I want to do the right thing for the product and safety, but also, you know, are we doing an extra step? Is it necessary? Are we, you know, wasting time and money? So I was just curious. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And Lisa, you got a point?
Well, I mean, it is a
Dr.
best
Green.
practice to use the sanitizer, especially for those things that you will eat raw. It's really how much risk you're willing to take on as a farm. By not using a sanitizer, Ryan's taking on more risk because that's considered kind of industry standard. So if there was an outbreak traced back to his farm and someone was to ask, were you using a sanitizer in your bulk water? He would potentially be more legally liable. He's taking other steps. I mean, it's not the one and only step though. I mean, I really think of food safety like as a gradation, right? So sanitizer is absolutely a best practice for those things you're going to eat raw. Changing the water frequently, making sure to test your water for bacteria. He said nitrates, but definitely test for that bacteria. Keeping your totes themselves really clean. Washing hands before you put your hands in the water. But yeah, no, sanitizer is a best practice, Allison.
On farm safety is from, you know, a process through the whole life of that vegetable, not just the sanitizer. So we're not relying on the sanitizer to sort of save us. If you have a good practice from start to finish, you know, that's important. But yeah, what was I gonna say about the sanitizer?
You're gonna say, yeah, I'm doing it right, Allison.
Yeah.
Annalisa confirmed that you're doing the best practice. Yeah.
I remember what it was. So it's also possible that if it doesn't need to be cooled or washed, don't get it near the water. That's just as safe. Right. So like if it's early spring and your lettuces are already cool, maybe they don't need to be dunked at all.
If they're clean, I mean,
Yeah.
it's up to you and your buyer, I guess, Ryan, right? It's all about passing that by the buyer and making sure that the cleanliness is acceptable with whoever the buyer is. But there's no law that says everything needs to be washed by any means.
Yeah. So I don't want to get off topic, but I did want to see, Ryan, if you were using Sanidate, just out of curiosity.
I'm not, but you know, even a week ago when I was talking to Annalisa, I maybe should. You know what I'm saying?
A lot of it is how you kind of grew up, so to speak, doing it. Ryan worked on farms where they didn't. I will say there's a lot of people who have come up on farms now who it is the standard, especially I will say in other states across the country. When you bulk wash lettuce, you use a sanitizer. It is very common. So I will just say that it probably is force of habit, right, Ryan?
It's a force of habit.
It also extends the shelf life a bit too. So.
Yeah. No, it's very good. Glad you brought it up, Allison. This is what we're here for. So let's get into, okay, let's assume, right? We're doing things safely, right? We're using best food safety practices. We have a quality product. I think that's 98% of it, right? It's not what's in it's not the box itself. I'm going to talk about boxes. It's not the box itself that's going to sell the product. It's the product itself that is by far the most important, no doubt. And so, yep, we've got a properly cooled product or well-stored product or a properly cured product. There's too many vegetables. I'm not going through them all, but it looks clean. It's of quality. It's graded. It's not funky looking. You kind of know these things, right? You buy produce as opposed to just raising produce, right? So we have a quality product. Now, the next part is, you know, what are the case standards? And you know, sometimes this gets sort of annoying. Like I hear some growers just like, I don't know, they make me buy a box, and why do I gotta buy a box? And blah, blah, blah. You know, okay, I get it. All right. You have a new expense because you're selling to these wholesale people and they're all grouchy about boxes, but there's really kind of a reason for it. And I, from my point of view, is like, you know, Mr. Ag Finance or Ag Business Management, one of the biggest reasons to have the standard and to follow a standard, or at least know what the heck the standard is you can agree on what is the value of that product, right? Now, if you were talk to a grain trader and you're like, well, I want to sell some grain, and for you, the standard is, I don't know, the grain that the corn that's heirloom, that's at a different moisture, and it fits in this cup. You're actually not going to have a very good conversation with the commodity trader in downtown Chicago who doesn't think in those terms, right? You're just making up your own terms. And grain traders are like, number 2 dent corn at a given percentage. It's they make it into a commodity, right? So we're specialty crop people, and sometimes we want to be too specialized, right? On this one, let's not get too specialized. For the people that are buyers, they're used to just buying this like as a commodity. It's like there's a standard, like, so yeah, we can take the lettuce and we can just throw it in our harvest bin, and this works just fine in a direct marketing situation. But to somebody buying the lettuce, it's the one on the left that they're used to buying. And if you just show up with a bin and you're like, I don't know, there's 18 in there, and you're trying to sell them 18 heads of lettuce, and they're used to always buying 24 heads of lettuce, they might think, oh, sure, I'll buy that. You got a case of lettuce, huh? At $24, that's a good deal. And then you show up not with 24 heads, but 18. It's actually, then miraculously, it's not a good deal. So the standard allows you to kind of get on the same page with people who end up buying a lot of product, which is different than our direct to consumer who's used to buying, yeah, I'll take a bunch of carrots and 2 heads of lettuce and a cabbage over there. They can see with their own eyes what they're buying, but these folks often can't, right? So in terms of standards, I think this is a very useful resource. This NC growing together, I think it's North Carolina growing together. Whoever the NC people are, I don't know. That's what it's labeled, and it's in our folder. They have a very good kind of rap sheet of each product. They give you a little harvest guidance, like how do we get quality? What are we looking for in terms of the characteristics of quality, right? How might we deal with it post-harvest? But what's important for us here is the packing standard, right? So beans, wholesale, 25 to 30 pounds, 1 1/9 bushel box. That's what we want to know, right? And if you see here, in terms of retail and how that wholesale product is retailed, okay, excuse me, if you're selling direct to retail, yep, you can sell it to them bulk in 20 25 to 30 pounds in a 1 1/9 bushel box. But you can sell to them bulk and loose, but you can also do it in 5-pound bags is another standard. So some of this is about that conversation with your buyer about, are they then retailing it and they want it packed as a retail pack, or do they prefer to buy it bulk? But at the very least, you'd want to know what is that kind of that bulk standard. And it tells a little bit about shelf life and how it's stored. So here, just because it's available to me, is Co-op Partners wholesale price sheet. We'll be using this in our little exercise here. I have it just because I'm involved in the co-op, but you know, this is kind of like a window into the life of a grocery buyer. They sit and they look at sheets like this all day long in terms of buying produce, right? So it's kind of interesting. This is the pricing, is like the wholesale pricing to a retail buyer. And, you know, like I said before, part of the idea behind the standards is to keep that price clear, right? And we can see here just I don't know, can I like annotate? Yes, I can draw something. Okay, can I draw there? Okay, there we go. Look at that. So as we're reading this thing, what do we got? We got the item, broccoli, 18 pounds. Oh, 18 pound case. Well, that's interesting. Maybe if I showed up with a 40-pound case in a cabbage box, wouldn't work so well. They have the ID, that's their order ID. And then right here, this is the wholesale price. Right? And then it's like, what is their source? So these are the things we're looking at. Brussels sprouts. Oh, okay. Oh, the Brussels sprouts come. Ooh, 25-pound lot. Oh boy, I can't draw with this. They also are selling them as a 10-pound box, right? Cabbage, 40 to 45-pound case. Here's a different green cabbage from another place, 40, 45 pounds. Oh, Savoy cabbage, a 35-pound case. Carrots in a 10 5-pounds. As grocery, we call them 10 5s or 12 3s. You end up with this shorthand. But again, this is a good indication of like grocery buyers, what are the standards that they're used to. Let's like look at their actual price sheet. Okay, stop doing that drawing there, Ryan. Oh my God, for real? Look at all my stupid. Did you see this? I'm obviously too dumb to do this. Erase this stuff. Okay, hold on.
Ryan, while
also
you-
looks
Yeah.
like Sal raised their hand too.
Now,
Yep.
Hey, I just wanted to make a note. So I was a produce buyer for a restaurant for a while,
okay.
and some of the like standard sizes, like that 35 pounds of green beans or whatever, is way too much for the restaurant to handle. So we would buy from, farmers that would sell it to us in 10-pound cases. And I would just say, in that conversation with your buyer, kind of ask them what their capacity is. Because I would
Yeah.
see some like price sheets coming in from some of the farms, and they're all in these really massive standard quantities, but I'm like, I don't want to buy this much. So just, I think that's important to know, is what the capacity of your purchaser is too.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it really dovetails with what we were talking about before in terms of knowing your buyer and marketing to those buyers. At the end of the day, it's if you know what the standard is, you can also then have a more intelligent conversation about half cases and smaller lots that can dovetail well. I mean, our co-op's a great example. We can't for the life of us ever get through a case of parsley. So, I sell the co-op, a dozen bunches of parsley as opposed to a 36 count. And because the 36 count, you can't ever get through. So yes. But at least if we know where these standards are and how we can compare, you have a little sense of the pricing. And even if somebody, right, Sal, I think you might agree that even if the half case is a little bit more than half of the full case, it's still a good deal because you don't have any shrinkage. Correct?
Yeah,
Ryan,
for sure.
Allison had a question in the chat. What's the CT/WT when it's different from what's in the description?
Oh, that sometimes they make a difference between the count and the amount. So I would say like this broccoli, I think there's probably on average a 14 count in an 18-pound case. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't make any sense though, does it? I don't know. We should ask my wife, the grocery buyer. But for the most part, it's the poundage. I've never looked at this column, frankly.
And then Allison suggested also having a standard size and price and also a per pound price for
Yeah.
the situations like Sal was describing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can break it down on a per pound amount, you know. It's easy for people to think through, no doubt. It's good. So where do you find this packaging? For a lot of us in all us Minnesotans, I don't know, I kind of think like the vast majority comes from Jordan Seeds as far as I know. And maybe if somebody has another source, they can put that into the chat that they've worked through. Maybe Nolt sells post-harvest packaging. But here on page 28, we'll be doing a little exercises to take we're trying to match up, you know, the right box with the right product, if you will. And it also shows us some pricing on those for those cases as well. Okay, before I get to there, the last part that I think is important in terms of packaging, it just sort of that organizational part and some of the details that you can incorporate in the packaging. So this is just me taking a picture yesterday in the cooler, which is kind of a light day at the co-op. A lot of things were out on the floor looking at the back stock. So I always like to have people just imagine a 20-year-old part-timer who's trying to keep a store stocked, or a 20-year-old part-timer who's, you know, working at the restaurant, and the chef says, hey, go and get the green beans. You want to be as clear as possible so that you can get a quick look at what actually is in this case. Some produce people might actually mark it up in terms of when something came in order to keep track of the age. But at the very least, you're really assisting your buyer with a clear label. I've seen labels that have date, size, product, name of farm, just something simple on it. And if you're using a case, you can just Sharpie that stuff on there. But oftentimes reusable wax boxes, people are using a label, which is helpful to that 20-year-old finding your product, and they can organize their cooler appropriately. Let's see, let me delete these things because I'm get rid of that. Okay. Other here on the right, upper right, we have kind of some of the details that you see in terms of how things are packaged. Like a number of greens that lose their moisture oftentimes are topped just with a paper wrap, just a piece of paper. Honestly, it can just be butcher paper or something like that. You can throw it over, say, parsley or lettuce or cilantro. It just helps to keep a little bit of moisture in and keep those looking well or looking good over a longer period of time in a storage situation. Because again, you gotta just think this thing has to look good a week later and 10 days later, depending on the amount of turnover. Plastic bags and liners are often used in a wax box. Say such things as zucchini and cucumbers, again, to help retain some of their moisture and have them look good. I've certainly seen them without, so that just might be a detail that you can kind of play around with, or get your nose into your buyer's cooler and just say, you know, hey, did you ever notice any detail that kind of helps that I could do on my end that might help this hold longer on your end? You're really doing them a favor trying to pay attention to some of these details. Okay, so stop being so wordy, Ryan. So let's do a breakout because you're probably just tired of listening to me at this point. So in our breakout, what we're going to do is we're going to play find the right box, right? And again, you can we can go by the standard here on the co-op partners price sheet, or we can get fancy, like what would a half case be, a la Saul's suggestion, which is a good one. So we're going to look at, just try to get used to looking at a few different resources. One, we're going to go into the co-op partners price sheet. We're going to look up and say, what's that standard? And what's that wholesale price that grocer is buying or food service person is buying? Let's look up that standard in that NC Together resource. Is that the same as what we see in co-op partners? Is it a 1 1/9 bushel box? Is it a, if it's saying it's a 20-pound case, is that a 5/9 bushel box? That might be then that North Central Together or NC Together's thing. And then we're going to go to page 28 in Jordan's, and we're going to try to find that right box. I say 2 crops, just in sake of time, let's just do 1 crop, right? I'm going to give you free reign to pick a crop, pick a cabbage, pick a lettuce, green beans, beets, your call. Look up the price, look up the specs, look up the standard, and let's go try to find a box that would help us get to that standard and find the cost for it. And I think it should probably take, I don't know, 12, 15 minutes to do this. Make sure that we can, because we're going to juggle a few different resources. Emily.
If you'd like to, I mean, we typically try to take a break at 10:30, so we could do like 5-minute break for folks and then come back and do this afterwards, if that's okay, just to give people a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I threw the link in the chat and you can pull that up, but let's take a 5-minute break and then we will dig into this afterwards.
Sounds good.
Hey, Ryan, it's Eric. Say what, where on that New Year.
So I talked to her for quite a bit about that yesterday. She was just really encouraging people who are working with consumers or trying to sell product to be very aware of the cultural differences in how people view a product. Like Brett mentioned a potential restaurant interest in radish greens. You know, for some of our new immigrant communities, greens are a huge deal. They would eat the tomato greens, you know, eat the greens off of bean plants instead of harvesting the beans. And so it kind of opens up a whole new world of how you look at your products. There could be a market for things you never thought were marketable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's our answer, Eric. Radishes, a 24 count. 24 count.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so what's the size box for that? Here, you can do that in your small group. Emily, is this been 5 minutes?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, everybody. So Emily's going to throw us in little groups. Remember, this is our, okay, we've got 3 resources in this link that's in the chat. So that'll bring you to the packing and packaging folder. And there's these 3 resources we're going to use. 1, the co-op partners price list. Pick a product for your group, find its price, find how it's listed. Is it 25 pounds, 40 pounds, whatever, or by count, could be by count. Let's then look at this NC Together, these wholesale standards. Let's find that same product, whether it's cabbage or it's beans or beets. What's their suggested case? And then let's go to Jordan's and let's look up that case. Is it available? what does it cost? Right? So, well, 15 minutes to work through an example together as a group. And let's see how we do. Okay, we're back. I don't want to hear details from every group. I just want, I mean, from each group, if there's just a little bit of reaction on what you learned or discovered. What do we got? Brett's group.
Yeah, well, if you start with basil, you are stopped really quickly. And if you switch to strawberries, then you're stopped again. So we just went with cucumbers because not everything was listed.
Okay. But found out the cucumbers. Yeah. How much does that box cost? More than you want.
10% of the sale price to CPW.
There you are. And
250.
Lisa? Yeah.
Eric, do you want to give the update, what you found?
Eric, what do we find?
Oops, I'm muted. So we figured out that there are that peppers are sold in the bushel and a ninth container, and they're about 25 to 30 pounds, and that contains about 85 peppers, which our group thought was probably quite a bit for our customers. So we tried to scale it down to 11 pounds and 8 pounds.
Yeah. So like using a 5/9 box or something like that, or a half bushel box. Yeah. Jane's group, who else, what else? Any other kind of reactions, other groups? Was there a Jane group?
Yeah, Cody, do you want to go ahead and talk about it? Because you kind of took the lead on this one.
Yeah, we did cucumbers too. So it was about $250 a box. We kind of came to. There's a couple different options based on the standard sizing. I think we didn't really discuss it, but I know I personally thought like a 40-pound box of cucumbers was definitely a lot. So we opted to go with I think it was the 5/9 bushel box. So
we did note the price drop as you buy more quantity and talked about the potential for farmers or hubs to go together to purchase larger quantities and get that price break, but also noted that you need storage space for all of those boxes, clean and dry storage space.
Yeah, pallet of boxes is a lot of boxes. Huh?
Yeah, Ryan, we did come up with one question, is that often smaller accounts will like order a half a box, but we know that cooler space is at a super high premium. And so if you give them a box and it's only half full, you've got half that box of airspace taking up room. But there didn't seem to be like smaller format boxes. Is there something like that? What can you do to help a restaurant or something that, man, cooler space is everything?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the Jordan's thing, and I mean, other people can chime in if they're getting stuff from other places. I mean, you got your smallest wax box, isn't it a half bushel? Isn't that what we said on there? Was there something smaller on there? I mean, we ended up talking tomatoes, so we ended up on a 1-layer tomato box, which is a cardboard case. Those 1 layers are that maybe the smallest box there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you want to size it appropriately, Brett, but you got to be able to find the right packaging, you know? Again, this is maybe just one source of packaging. I think probably the most popular for special craft people in Minnesota. But maybe folks have other resources out there where they've sourced a wider variety. Anybody?
Uline has 3 different size boxes that are wax boxes.
There you go.
And you can order almost any count.
Gotcha. Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, Uline would be a good example. We also talked, I know, with Annalisa about a little bit about liners. Sometimes people will use a liner in terms of reusing boxes. Like I know Jordan's doesn't sell liners, but just a plastic liner so that you're reusing a box. With that, Uline also be a good source for that as well. The packaging people taking over the world. Do we have another group? No. Bun pan liners from Amazon. Oh, okay. There we go. Thank you, Allison. There. That's good. In our own group, we did tomatoes. Got $1.86 a box. We looked at the 1 layer for heirlooms. There's also another box for a 20-pound lot. And but then we ended up having this nice conversation about Kelly and Sheila shared a bit about how they're working with their wholesale accounts and their arrangements. And she was talking about how she's able to get a lot of boxes saved for her by her local grocer. We're talking about her pricing, half of the retail price. It's kind of a clean price for her. It's kind of working on most products. And Kelly's like, we got arrangements all over the place. So maybe it's random and confusing, maybe, Kelly, or something like that, or however you want to.
Keeps us on our toes.
Yeah, good. All right. Where do folks buy their label stickers? Either stickers with logos or labels to write on product. That one picture I had of my logo, I've done through Sticker Mule. Relatively inexpensive. These are stickers on a roll. They call them. I think there's, I don't know, 250 or 500 on a roll or something like that. Other label. Elevate packaging.
Yeah.
The stickers are free, Minnesota grown.
Allison and I use the Avery labels, and we spray them with spar varnish, which I don't know if it might be more cost effective to just buy the water resistant ones, because you have all that labor time and spraying the thing and then waiting for it to dry. So I don't know. We might be just being cheap.
Yeah, but I have kiddos who like to, spray the spar varnish, so it works for me.
Good.
I've been buying labels for over 20 some years, and the pricing gets to be outrageous sometimes. And so I use a place called Graphic Technologies. And then I don't know if any of you guys know, when you get them on a roll of 250 to 1,000, Uline has a really cool label dispenser. Instead of sitting there and pulling them off individually. Because my kids grew up, so they quit playing with stickers.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes.
That label dispenser is pretty ingenious.
All right. I'm writing that one down myself. Uline label dispenser. So we're going to talk packing shed stuff after this. So that's you're presaging that, Bruce. And what was the place for the labels, Bruce?
I've used just about every one of them, and I found the guy in town in Cloquet here, Graphic Technology.
Graphic Technology.
And sometimes them label places, they take weeks to get them to you, but this guy's price is the best, and he gets them to me within a few days, which is amazing.
There you go, everybody. Support a Minnesota business. Find Bruce's friend up at in Cloquet. Thank you. All right. Well, that was great. And yes, Renee points out that there's a dog in your window, Bruce. A cute dog, I think. Great. Let me get back. Let's get to the part that I had a lot of fun with here. And yes, I know, Emily, 11:15. You got to stop talking. We're gonna look at some packing shed stuff. Kind of excited to talk about this. It's kind of fun. We found the right box. Some of you guys already went there in terms of packaging as a percent of sale. So in terms of breakout, the extra credit, you know, things are priced by wholesale. If you're selling to co-op partners and you want to say, what would I sell to co-op partners? You can just take out the margins, right? And so I took in a cabbage example. I multiplied by 0.8 because we're giving 20% to co-op partners. If we wanted to find what that pricing is to co-op partners. Cost for packaging, man, a cabbage box, freaking nuts, $4.28. So about pushing 12% of the total cost, which takes 10 cents off each pound of cabbage. So yes, I want to find as inexpensive a way as possible in order to market that and still get it into the standard that they might be expecting or that would work best for them. And so, yeah, if I can find some of these gently used, but still in a good and food safe condition, hey, I would love to do that. And I'm going to save myself multiple amounts of dollars every time I sell a box of cabbage. So let's look at a packing house design and setup. I think it's important just because, hey, if we're spending 30% of your time there and, you know, we're making pretty produce come out one end and dirty produce come in the other end, how to do that efficiently? What are the different elements that we need to bring together in order to do that well? And so I just got some pictures of the major elements here of packing house equipment. It's pretty basic stuff, right? Tables, things not on the ground, things up on a table. Things on a table are better than things that are just laying on the ground in the mud and in the water. And for me, I sometimes feel like I'm just shooting water all over the place in my packing house. And actually, yeah, we want to get things clean, and you know, there's water flowing all over the place. So just trying to keep it safe. We want to keep things up. Here's a CSA packing day at my place. I also like to point out these industrial rollers. I ended up getting these at an auction, and man, for packing CSA boxes, these have been freaking great, where we get the boxes started on one end and we just roll them on down out to the truck on the way out. And I think depending on how you're set up, I mean, rollers can really make a good difference, saving your back and just kind of helping with the flow through the packing house. Other elements, sinks. I already talked about some of my sinks. I got used. I'm in dairy country, so everybody was required to have these dairy sinks. They're typically sold off cheap at auctions. They're stainless steel, so they're good quality. But yeah, tubs. We're talking about, Allison's talking about tubs and double or triple washing stations for salad mix. That's what we have going on here. We got, we're going from tub to tub to tub, maybe the initial wash over to the sanitized wash, or a second wash, then to the sanitized wash. And of course, we've got crates. As somebody that's always had sort of a mix and match environment, I found that as I transition more to like one type of crate, sort of makes my life a little bit simpler, just because it's standardized, right? As so they'll all stack right. We want them to interlock and stand up if we want them to, or to collapse together. And of course, here we have a place here where we have crates all washed and stacked and drying. And look at this, it's on a piece of cement, even better than on muddy grass or in muddy gravel, what have you. At the very least, it's up off the ground. You see the little pallets that they're on. Other elements is a cooler. I mean, I remember being in a workshop, I don't know, 15 years ago for beginning operators. And this guy who was probably my age at the time, seemed like a seasoned veteran, was like, one of the first pieces of equipment before we start talking about tractors and discs and all this is, if you're in produce, you should buy a cooler. And it always seemed to me like, geez, man, you got to grow it first. What's with you in the cooler? But I agree with him now. I think a cooler is like such a standard piece in order to have quality product come out the end. I would say if you're sitting there and you're relatively new and you're like, I got a whole bunch of things to buy in order to get this farm up and running, I would actually put the cooler in the top 5. Because it is really that important for quality. Here on the left is an example of a CoolBot cooler. You can see that refrigeration unit in the back that's hooked up to a CoolBot. That's one way. Is if you just built an insulated room, CoolBot is one way you can just sort of re-engineer an air conditioner to go lower than you typically have it in your house. That's great. I'm not that talented. I am not good at construction at all. And myself, you can see the little cooler behind my son, my very young son, again, behind these Napa cabbages. This is a cooler that I got. It's a 6x8 walk-in cooler. Some guy was hanging deer in it for about 10 years in Fargo. Got it on Craigslist for, I think, $1,600. So again, I'm a big fan of hunting around, trying to find cheap things online, right? We can all do that. But I find it useful just having I've yet to outgrow the 6x8. There's times I might want a 10x10, but I think there's no reason to oversize this thing for what you have going on. And so, and to use the actual, standard panels, it's more efficient than me creating some stupid thing. And people do get creative, right? I mean, I've seen more than a few of these over the years. Here's somebody with a CoolBot unit that they stuck in a trailer, right? So they're lining it with some type of styrofoam and then some type of board or wipeable board on the outside. This just looks like a standard 1/4-inch plywood or something. But again, here's a cool environment. It's mobile. I don't know, are they taking this stuff to market this way? So it looks cool to me. Anyways, you guys are more creative than I am. So I thought it'd be cool. Let's introduce and take a gander at some of these different case studies here. And I just thought in these case studies that came out of Vermont, it's going to be part of our homework just to kind of get us inspired and think about what tools or stations, what have you, we might have in our own places. All of them also have these individual YouTube videos about particular elements in their packing shed, but also about their packing shed generally. And I just thought we'd take a look at this just to kind of get some visuals and, make a note about what do you see? What are the things that you're seeing in this video that you're just like, oh yeah, I could see that being very useful at my place. So let me run this. You're not going to hear it's just dumb standard music anyways. You're not going to hear that. It doesn't matter because there's not much to hear. We'll just see this video. Oh, Ryan, find the video. Here it is. Okay. All right, elements that we saw that you're like, yes, give me that.
I want that floor drain.
Floor drain. Look at that. They've got a floor drain. Awesome.
The pallet jack.
They got a pallet jack. Yeah. You're like, maybe not that scale, but.
And everything's on wheels at that. If you look at that storage unit there, it's on everything on wheels is good.
Everything on wheels, right? We need to reset things. We can. Yep. Other elements?
I think all of the surfaces are washable. They're be able to spray down the whole shoot and match.
Yeah. Everything's washable. Yeah, we want to rinse her down, we can. You see the overhead spray, right? You see that the sprayer is like all the water's hooked up over here. I know that's one little improvement I made on my own place. A lot of times if you have this overhead water, you can have a hands-free situation that you can move a little bit quicker with two hands, say washing and cleaning things, because the sprayer's overhead, as opposed to me holding something. I'm always holding a hose. You get good at it, but great. Yeah, so that's one thing I'm going to have you guys look at are these different videos about these different elements and different setups for packing sheds. You know, certainly part of it are the different pieces of equipment, but it's also the overall flow as well. This is just a schematic I made this morning to think this through about my own packing shed. We're over here on the left, we have kind of an overhang with some outside tubs, and you've got my rollers and tables there in the middle. And here's where you got the arrows trying to show the flow, right? We flow to the right, on the right-hand side, we go by the sinks, and oftentimes then those things go over to the cooler. And over on the left here, we have sort of a dry table, a sorting table where we're sorting onions, we're sorting garlic, we're sorting tomatoes, we're wiping peppers. That's where all the dry things happen, or on these tables in the middle before we set up for packing. But if you can put out even your current situation and start putting in the arrows, like how do things flow through here? An ideal world is dirty things come in, they flow through clean, and then they flow out and they go into a truck, right? That's one of the most efficient sort of things. There's another element I noticed in that video is the truck just parked up back to the packing shed to be loaded and just drive away. If you start putting your arrows, and I did this little exercise this morning, is there a bottleneck? Is there a place where it's like maybe too tight, or things are always trying to flow through? And right there in front of the cooler and between the cooler and the last table is most definitely a bottleneck. And I know that. And when I drew this out, it only emphasized that I already knew that. You know what I'm saying? So it's okay to just say, this is where we're at now, and how can we kind of improve on this flow and setup? And sometimes that means you bust out the back wall and make it bigger, right? And part of it is we can think about packing shed in terms of stations, right? Bruce was talking about this label, the label dispenser at Uline. Here on the left-hand side is sort of a packing station. Here we got the labels on a little roll so that we can kind of officially take them. Maybe if we had Bruce's dispenser, we can do this a little bit quicker. Great place where we're packing salad mix, maybe where we're packing microgreens, we're packing smaller things, or we're putting things in clamshells. Everything right there and is room for multiple people to work. Right-hand side, we already talked about, you know, triple wash sinks or double wash sinks. Together you see the salad spinner in being held right next to the sinks, right? So we're going from sink to sink into spinner, and then packing out of the spinner. We also see, and Lisa would be happy to see, there's that sanitizer hanging there in right by the sinks. Other stations that are common are spray tables. Think about dirty beets, dirty carrots. This is a U of M picture. Maybe Annalisa or Natalie took this picture, as far as I know. They can claim credit, but oftentimes these spray tables can be on the outside of a packing shed before we're bringing product in. If it's a kind of a really kind of messy spray table, we don't want mud shooting all over the place. But being able to roll that product around on the table is way easier than just holding it while your arm's getting tired all day. And lastly, just this point about how do you organize an organization? You know, a small thing on mine is I did buy these little magnet strips, and try to get all those knives back to the same place as best I can. But if anybody knows me, I got things going all over in my head and I leave knives all over the place. But at least if things have a home, they have a chance of getting to their home. And some of you, I'm sure, are way better than me. You say everything has a place and a place for everything. What's that saying? A place for everything and everything in its place, right? It's like my dairy farm neighbor who's like the most organized human being on earth, who's like, 1/4-inch socket. I know exactly where that is, you know. Me, I just have them strewn all over the place. But organization, whether it's at packing sheds, packing station, or knives, and giving everything a place is very appropriate. So homework, if you have a target crop, just to kind of redo what we had just done, and I don't think it'll take you very long at all. Look up a crop just like we did that you may have as a target crop for this year for wholesale, and find appropriate packing materials. That just task number 1. Shouldn't take you very long, a few minutes. Second, I think this is the fun one that got me inspired as I was preparing for this. Peruse the Vermont Extension case studies. I think there's like 8 of them or something. And just peruse it. Like there's a web page and you'll see case study, case study, case study. You can read about each one. They have pictures from their packing sheds, and then they have 1 to 3 videos for each one that you can watch. You get to pick the format that you like. This is the link for it, which we'll have, right, Emily, will post by the homework, and just ID 1 or 2 elements you'd like to improve or develop, right? So some of you are like, hey man, I don't even have a packing shed. I don't know what you're talking about. Like you're going to say, okay, what do you think is the most important? What do you take from here is the most important thing to start? And some of you are like, yeah, I got a packing shed. It's a total mess. But hey, I kind of like what they're doing here. And I really like to, as an element, maybe I incorporate that. Maybe I can improve on what I'm doing. Maybe I just put wheels on some of the things that are in the packing shed now, so we can reconfigure. And show you here. No, Ryan. Right here. This is what this looks like. This is what that packing, those case studies look like. And it's going to go through this farm, different size, what their project did, and then you can just click on each one of them and read about them in detail. Great visuals here. Here, before and after pictures. What did they do? How's it fitting into their operation? How did they do their packing shed improvements? And then it IDs different features, right? Like they got this drain in. What did it cost them? What was the issue that they were trying to solve? So anyways, again, I feel like whoever did these should get an award. This is just freaking cool that these things did.
A total of 38 acres.
And with that, that's all I got.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll make sure that some of those instructions about the homework are also included in the form that you all submit. But that wraps up the actual content for today. The last things that we wanted to make sure that you had as part of our process of just making sure that this is a valuable experience for you all, and also just being able to communicate to other people, like, what's the value, right, of what you are getting out of this? We do an evaluation. So what we're going to do is, for all of you that are on the call, it's going to be organized as a poll, just as we've done before, where it pops up. What you'll notice in terms of the format of the questions is we're going to be asking you about basically your knowledge before and after each session. So you'll see the same question listed twice. There's just part of it says before and after. And then the third question for each session will ask you whether you attended the live session or whether you sort of made it up through just watching the video recording. So that's what we've got. There's going to be 2 polls that I launch in order to do this, because they have a maximum of 10 questions per poll. That's just kind of how Zoom sets it up. And then for anyone who isn't able to make it for this call that isn't on now, but has been kind of following along and sort of making up later, we'll just send out a link in the follow-up email that has a link to a Google form. Same questions, just a different sort of platform to do that. So we've got about 9-ish minutes or so in order to have you fill this out. So I'm going to launch the first one, and I'll throw some music on in the background too, and then I'll check on participation. And basically, once I see that everyone has completed the first one, and I guess facilitators, don't worry about it. So I'll keep that in mind in terms of numbers. But once we've got basically all of you have finished this, then I'll launch the second poll. Okay, as the last folks are wrapping up on that, I just want to make a couple announcements as we close out today. So looking ahead, we've got bonus sessions coming up basically on the same schedule as before. So in 2 weeks, we'll have another one that you're optional, right? It's not a requirement, but if you want to come join us, we'll send out that information very soon. We'll also send out the link for you to schedule that advising session with folks. So we'll have a deadline for a couple weeks from now, and then I'll coordinate with our advisors on availability and scheduling. And then I think the only other thing would just be to work on your homework that Ryan assigned you. So thank you all for another great session. We really appreciate your participation, engagement, and questions. And we will hopefully see you in a couple of weeks. Keep an eye out. We'll have more information about the regional tours. And with that, I think that's all I've got for you today.
It's great. Thanks all.
Thanks, Emily, for keeping us on track. And thanks, everybody.